Gets it off in time. And he's got it, baby! Big time Nets win!
The only Net fans you know? The only Nets fans you know? Man. I mean, come on, man. Or are these guys?
Welcome back to the Only Net Fans You Know podcast. I'm Peter. Welcome to episode number 91. Our guest today is a credentialed member of the media covering the Nets for USA Today, Sharif Phillips-Keaton. How's it going, bro?
Going good, Pete. Glad to be here, talk some ball with you. How you feeling, man?
Good, man. I'm so happy we could link up and do this. We got a lot to talk about. I'm just going to jump straight into it. After Vegas said 18.5 over-under, couple upset wins, what's your take so far with this team?
The Nets they're definitely shocking some people. And I mean, the players have talked about it, numerous times, especially like some of the veterans, like, Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith. They said they didn't care much for the low projections and they don't view the team in that light. And I think you're starting to see, Jordi Fernandez has his squad playing, they always played hard, even with, previous coaches, but now you see them kind of putting the little things together. And I mean, Jordy's been speaking up for the players. It seems like every time out, he's, getting to the ref's ear. And, I think this squad is really trying to prove the doubters wrong.
All right. I really got to ask this. What is the difference between JV and Jordy? I feel like it's night and day. Am I crazy?
So what I will say, talking to, a lot of the players since training camp began, talk about how Jordy is, especially someone like Dennis Schroder, who has, international experience in playing for, like European coaches, that Jordy is more of a straight shooter. And if there's something that the players are doing that he doesn't like, he will let them know, not necessarily like get up in their face about it, at least not from what I've seen, but he will be like, hey, I want it to be done this way, whether it's, he called a timeout because someone isn't getting back on defense, or you've seen a couple times over the past few games, if whoever is, bringing the ball up the court, if they're not bringing it up with pace, he'll let the squad know about it. So I would say the biggest difference is it seems like Jordy is more or less willing to correct players in the moment, and he isn't afraid to tell them, obviously in a way that they will still feel like it's a, mutual like partnership, not like he's talking down to them. And I think Jordy's really mastered the balance of being strict with his players, but also like letting them be themselves, in the light of trying to win more games.
So do you think JV was more of, how can I say this? I don't want to say like a perfectionist, but maybe a little bit too hands-on?
I never got that sense from JV. I've seen what, some of the Nets community thought about him in relation to a player, especially, his relationship with Cam Thomas. It didn't seem like it was the most positive relationship, but I think where JV may have lost the locker room is just, it's hard to communicate to players like, hey, this is the best way for us to play. And then you see them, you think about that West Coast trip, and I think it was like in 6 games and they lost like 4 of them. And then you come home, you lose some games you should have won. And then the last game to end the All-Star break, lose by 50 to the Celtics. And I think at that point, even if you're preaching the right stuff, the message will fall on deaf ears when, the results are showing up. And right now, I think Jordy has that benefit that what he's saying is showing on the court that it will win them games.
You know what really sticks out to me? Obviously, Jordy's been coaching for a very long time, but he never played in the NBA. And the fact that he does get a lot of respect, I don't want to say it's like surprising to me, but I feel like there's something there, as in the players respect this dude so much for someone who hasn't played. And, there's been several cases of guys who have not played, just totally, aren't accepted in the locker room. Is it him just being a straight shot that the players like him?
I don't know if players care about, if their coach played at the same level they played at, and then say, hey, whatever you're saying, I take with, more honesty. I just think as long as the players know that, you're not trying to, just feed them a bunch of stuff that isn't true. And I think for Jordi, I think a lot of the players respect where he's come from, especially with his latest stop being with the Sacramento Kings and seeing how that team has ascended in previous years. And I think the players understand the way he coaches is different than you would say most NBA coaches, especially those with that European background. Like they're gonna shoot you straight, and they're obviously not gonna disrespect you, but they're not as much into coddling or, trying to just appease you. They're like, hey, no, I want it done this way. And I think with Jordi, even without the playing experience at a high level, I think the players know he knows what he's talking about, but he also knows what's best for them.
Jordi's been able to really get this team to buy in. It feels really quickly. Obviously, he was rated. I think he was voted the best assistant coach in the NBA last year. So obviously, the guy's name was known in the NBA. It's not a shock, but you look at the talent, man, I don't want to be mean. I look at the talent on the roster, and, I went to the game against the Nuggets. The Nets are playing well against the Nuggets. They take them to overtime. They wind up losing, right? They're playing up against these teams that they probably shouldn't be playing this well against. How is the scheme play into these games? JV got killed by Mikal Bridges for not having game plans for certain teams. How is Jordi as far as game planning?
As far as game planning, it seems that Jordi understands what his players are good at. But when you look at a team like the Nuggets, like you don't have anyone that's going to match, go shot for shot with Jokic. And it seems against the Nuggets, and it's not to say that the plan was necessarily to let Jokic do whatever he wanted. They really wanted to try to limit Jamal Murray, limit Michael Porter Jr., limit Aaron Gordon, and just hope that you're able to make enough shots that in the end you can have a chance to win the game, which is what happened. But obviously the Nuggets are still a really good team with obviously better talent. It seems like Jordi pays really good attention to detail, especially when you see the way that, the rotations. I know it's been weird to start the year because, Trendon Watford's been hurt. Daron's been hurt. Boyan's been hurt. And, Jordi's had to pretty much play small ball most of the time, but he's really figured out a way to, still keep that, that full court pressure on defense and still space the floor to offense. And I think a lot of teams are starting to see that, Cam Johnson's getting more, catch and shoot threes. Jordi's letting, Dennis Schroder go downhill a lot more, which is something he's really good at and probably, the best at it on the team. I think Jordi just understands who he has, and he's just trying to ask players to do what they're good at and not, I won't say not build on it, but for the moment, let players just do what they do and, let the cards fall where they may.
Has there been something that's been like, wow, man, that really shocked me. I didn't think this guy was going to do this.
So I think the surprising thing about Jordi is not even that he's so straightforward, but he seems pretty transparent too, aside from, the funny moments where he won't tell us who would be in the starting lineup in case of injury. But other than that, for example, the other night, I asked him about, I think it was before they played the Pistons, and I asked him about, how did he feel about the team's overall pace? Because I think when I had looked it up, they were like in the bottom half. And I know Jordi has made it a point many times that he wants the team to play fast on both ends. And that's why they're pressuring all 94 feet. And on offense, they're trying to, score earlier in the shot clock. And he even broke it down that they've looked at, the half court pace versus the full court pace, and they're two totally different numbers. But also he made it a point that, they were fouling a lot earlier in the season, in the first few games, I think they were averaging like 37, 38 fouls a game. And he was like, that's really killed their pace. And since they haven't been fouling as much, they've been able to play faster and, take the ball out of bounds and, get it up the floor more. So I guess the one thing I would say about him is he's been really transparent, and I've appreciated that.
What's your take on guys like Clowney not getting the minutes that fans feel like he probably should be getting? Or just even like some of the younger guys that you would kind of hope they'd be getting a little bit more minutes?
What I would say to that is I think Jordi and he actually spoke to us about that I think last night was for specifically someone like Noah Clowney, who obviously he didn't play last night with the hip soreness, but it seems like Jordi still believes in the younger players. Like obviously he's talked, he's waxed poetic on Cam Thomas and how he believes he can get into a place where he could be a more efficient scorer, and that, he has a lot of belief in him. And even when he talked about Noah Clowney, I think Clowney's like shooting like 34% from the field or something like that. And I think less than that from three. But what Jordi was saying was that he's not so concerned about shooting percentages at this time with someone like Noah Clowney. He's just more concerned with the process. And I think for fans who think that, Clowney should be playing more, I can't really speak to that because I think it's just hard for him to get minutes when you still have Cam Johnson, you still have, Dorian Finney-Smith, you got Ben, Nick Claxton. But I think Clowney will get the development he needs outside of playing time, especially because Jordi, that's pretty much been his claim to fame, is player development. So even if Clowney isn't seeing the playing time that some people think he should, I think Jordi has the right mindset of how Clowney can develop even without that.
So you're saying reps in after the games in practice? Is that what you're sort of alluding to?
Basically, I think Jordi will make it so that like the development of the young guys is still the priority, even if they're not getting the playing time in the games.
Let's get to a couple of the players. Cam Thomas is the face of the franchise. This is his first true look as the number one option. At the time of recording, he's scoring 24 points per game, 6th in total points, 6th in free throws, but he has a low field goal percentage. He's shooting 30% from three. He's 2nd in the NBA in field goals missed, and he's still averaging only 3 assists a game. He's an ISO player playing in an offense, the point series offense, that runs through, a big man in the elbow. So he's doing a lot of off the ball stuff. How's the adjustment been to that?
So it's actually funny because we were talking about this the other night that Cam Thomas, even though like what his play type has been like the past few seasons has been heavy on isolation, because he obviously is one of the better scorers in the NBA. I mean, we see the clips all the time of him creating something out of nothing, and it's just by his sheer talent. This year, he hasn't really been, ISOing that much. I think Jordi's really been intentional of trying to get Cam Thomas to basically score in the least amount of dribbles he can, because it seems like when he gets to ISO, even though he's good at that, it can bog down the overall performance of the offense. And I think this year you're seeing Cam try to adjust to it because he's, it's a new play style for him. But, getting him more reps in pick and roll, getting him, more, catch and shoot threes, or getting him on the move more. It's clearly an adjustment, especially, the past few games he's drawn some tough defensive assignments, the Pistons with like Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. Last night with, drawing Ja Morant and I'm trying to think of the other player, even like Jalen Wells, who has more length, and I think he's about like 6'4", 6'5", and I think he's
well. You got.
Yeah. So I think Cam's obviously adjusting to it, but I can see that he's almost on the other side of it. I think he's starting to figure out he's got to work on his off ball movement, especially with the way Jordi wants him to play. As far as him being the leader, I don't know if Jordi's expecting expecting him to be the leader of this team, especially because he has more of a veteran presence. Like guys like Dennis Schroder, Cam Johnson, Dorian have been, they've been doing a good job of maintaining that, almost like that player coach role. And, a lot of the younger players have talked about it. But I think for where Jordi has Cam right now, which is trying to get him to be a more efficient, not only scorer, but also he spoke about last night about when Cam Thomas has at least 8 potential assists in a game, they've won every single one. And obviously it's still early, but I think he sees where Cam Thomas's game can grow just as an overall offensive engine. And he's just trying to get Cam to get used to that now.
This is your opinion. What's one thing that he could work on, or something that he's really improved on since last year? You can pick any of the two.
Well, since we're talking ball, I'll take both. First, what I think Cam's really gotten good at, and I mean it started last season, under JV, under KO. He's done a really good job of knowing and understanding that he can get to the rim against a lot of different defenders. I think he's done a really good job of understanding he's a lot better of a driver than even he gives himself credit for. And I think he's leaning into that more. Where I think he could get better is, like I said earlier, is embracing more of that, trying to get his looks off ball movement, whether it's, doing a better job of getting his man into a screen so he can pop open. He gets a screen from like Nick Claxton, for example, and he doesn't come open, trying to keep the defender on his backside. So maybe he can get a lob, not like a lob like for a dunk, but maybe someone can loft the ball to him over the middle. He gets positioning. I think that's like the little things he can improve on. But yeah, aside from the past few games, I think Cam's really starting to blossom into the kind of player he can be, where I think the rest of the NBA world would recognize him as, a more complete offensive player.
Last point on CT. I love to see his defense, particularly in the pick and roll. I feel like he's gotten a little bit better. He still has a lot of work to do. Analytics rated him as one of the worst defenders in the NBA at one point towards the end of the season. And I love seeing him fight through the screens. You could see he's getting more of a feel for that defense. Man, I just, there's so much to work on his game. But do you feel like he's close to like putting it all together?
I think he's
He's still
definitely
very
getting
young. He's still very, very young. So I'm putting you, on the spot here.
Oh no, that's fine. I think he's actually getting pretty close. And I've always felt, ever since he started getting more playing time last season, I've always felt his issue was like effort. I think when you look at Cam Thomas, 6'3", 6'4", like 210, 215, like, and we can see he's I wouldn't say he has elite athleticism, but whatever's right below that, pretty good. Like, he's a fairly good athlete. And I think he has the body type to be able to be a good defender. Obviously, his play style is scoring, so there will always be something lacking there. But I always thought from last season, it was more of, kind of the stuff I talked about with the way guys are defending him. Like, if he gets screened last season, he tend to, like, that was the end of it. He just took the screen, and then whatever happened after that happened. I think this year you're seeing him, like, if he gets screened, he's giving more of an effort to fight over it. Now, if there's like a second and third screen, that's just like wear and tear. And obviously, it's hard. A lot of defenders get caught up in that. But I think this year it looks like he's competing more on the defensive end. Like, he's not getting screened as easily. He's making that second effort. If it is, getting the passing lane. I think that's where he can really improve his standing as a player, even if he never turns into a, all NBA defender or, even a great defender. If he can give that like second, third effort and compete on the defensive end the way he is, I mean, he would really raise the ceiling that way.
Absolutely. Nets have a very, very interesting roster. You got man, I'm such a big fan of Jalen Wilson, Zaire Williams. I just love what they bring. Schroder has been playing pretty well. I look at CT being a free agent, a restricted free agent, I should say. Zaire Williams, restricted free agent. He's balling out. You got these guys, Schroder, free agent. I wish the Nets would have locked up a couple of these guys, particularly Zaire. Uh, how has his vibes been? We saw the Nets put out a video after the Memphis game at at the Grizzlies and him yelling in the tunnel. How has he been in the locker room? And did like we heard so much? Oh, Zaire Williams is killing it in camp. We saw the preseason games. How has he been around the team, and what does he bring that's unique with his skill set?
I think he's just bringing, it's like a level of like enthusiasm and energy that I don't think you've really seen from other players. Like, I think, for example, like Mikal was like that when he first got here. And I think you see like that joy almost. And with Zaire, like, even though obviously he's, he got traded here in the offseason and as right now playing for his next contract, obviously he didn't get the extension in October, but you see the way he talks, especially through training camp in the preseason, that's like the way he plays. And I think if nothing else, like obviously if his shot isn't falling, he's still guarding 94 feet. He's still, giving that second and third effort that I talked about. Like whatever he talks a good game, but that's how he plays. That's who he is. And I think that's been infectious to the rest of the team. You see, obviously Dennis Schroder picking up 94 feet. He's used to doing that from his, FIBA days. And even like guys like Cam Johnson, who probably never played like that prior to the season, is buying into that whole giving that maximum effort. And I would say Zaire has been a really big catalyst of that.
I really wish they would have re-signed the dude. But, what am I going to do? Can't talk about spilled milk. Schroder puts up these great games, balling out, high assist numbers, putting up 20 points, hitting threes. I looked at his numbers for the first 6 games of the year. He was hitting all open threes, starting at 4 feet and up. A player's considered open. All of his threes were considered an open three, and I think he was hitting like 62% of them at a ridiculous pace. What happens when the other teams do what I did, and obviously they're a lot better than I, and they start, looking for that. They start making sure that Schroder doesn't get these open looks.
To answer your, I think you started to see that the game against Detroit and against the Bulls, even though they obviously beat the Bulls, where teams, and I mean, Schroder's in his 12th year in the league. I think, every team knows how he plays. And obviously, I think part of what it was to begin the season is he was obviously shooting well above expectation in general, not just from three. And I think those 2 games you saw his three wasn't falling, and I think he was 1 for 4 from 3 last night. But I think where you saw the difference last night was Schroder wasn't getting the open looks from 3, but he didn't let that stop him from trying to make an impact on the offensive end like he did against Detroit and Chicago. He continuously tried to probe that pick and roll. And obviously, I think that's his best attribute is, running the pick and roll and trying to, get to his mid-range shot or even get into the rim like he did against Zach Edey to basically ice the game in the end. his shooting will come and go. And I mean, coming into the season, he wasn't. And I mean, I know he shot the ball well last season, in the 20 games with the Nets. But when you look at his overall shooting percentages, that isn't his strong suit. But it seems like his shot selection has also improved. And I think the beginning of the season where you saw like his shot was falling and he was taking open shots. So I think once opponents start the game plan to not let him get those looks, as long as he commits to being a driver and operating that pick and roll, he can still have a good offensive impact.
I know we have a couple wins already, and fans are kind of going crazy because, we're supposed to be in a rebuild, but we're starting to win. Are we going to do this move? Are we going to get better? Do we sell off? Are they too good? It's way too early to say the Nets are out of a rebuild and let's build around CT. He's going to be the main guy and we get a max guy around him and we're all going to be happy and we're all going to dance around this team and he's going to lead us to a championship. That's obviously way too much time. Fans don't want to hear it. But one thing that did catch my eye, or I should say my ears, when I heard this, we already know Nets are going to have a lot of cap room. Shams, a couple weeks ago, talked about the Nets possibly poaching a player from restricted free agency. So I looked at the list. I saw a couple guys. And before I say anything, this is purely basketball talk here, right? I look at a 22-year-old, 6'8", Josh Giddey, 14 points a game, 47% from three, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. Obviously, the Bulls are not going to let him walk away for free. They'd probably match. But, man, if the Nets continue playing well, and I'm saying instead of us being a bottom 5 team, we wind up somehow, some way, wind up being kind of just under the play-in game. We get to free agency. Would you throw something at a Josh Giddey or a Kuminga or whoever it may be, a young up and coming player? Do the Nets have it together to stick with the game plan?
In a broad answer, I think it's still really early, and I gotta be honest. I've gone back and forth because I've seen obviously a myriad of people of are the Nets too good for the tank and all this, and I don't know if that's what this team is just yet. And I mean, the guys who are playing well for the Nets, I mean, it was expected. Cam Johnson's been around for a while. Dorian, Dennis Schroder, Cam Thomas might have a chance to average 25, 26 a game, whatever that leads to. I would say, so let's go with your scenario. If the Nets, let's say, end this season, it's April, whatever, and they finish just outside of the play-in. One, I think this is obviously just basketball talk. That would probably be the worst outcome because that means they obviously wouldn't be close to getting, Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, whoever. So you won't get your impact player through the draft. And let's say if then they have to resort to using their cap space to, let's say, try to get a Josh Giddey, a Jonathan Kuminga, or someone like that. I think that would be your next best option because then you're not going to have a elite prospect coming in the draft. I like Josh Giddey, and I know there was obviously a lot of memes about him in the playoffs last year with the Thunder about him just not being able to hit a shot, even though I think he shot like 33% from three. Like, it wasn't terrible.
There's also some other stuff off the court, which we're not going to talk about also, right. But it does deserve to be mentioned when when we're having this conversation.
I agree. Yeah, he has that off the court baggage too. And regardless of obviously the outcome of him being cleared, people still, you still have that on your resume. Right. But as a player, I like Josh Giddey, especially if the Nets like let's say they let Schroder walk in free agency if they don't trade him. Ben is also a free agent. Let's say they let him walk. You need a point guard, and the way it seems like it's been going this year, and obviously since last year, it doesn't seem like the team at any level is interested in seeing if Cam Thomas can be more of that combo guard, that point guard. If that remains the same and we're in, free agency next offseason, then I think you have to go after a point guard. And if Chicago, I mean, I don't know what Josh Giddey's market looks like, but let's say if Chicago lets him go, if the Nets throw, say, $20 million at him, you could do worse than Josh Giddey. And it wouldn't be your future answer, I don't think, because I think we've kind of seen what we need to see from him. But like someone like Jonathan Kuminga, who I don't know how to read that situation with him and the Warriors, because they obviously didn't give him his rookie scale extension. There's reports he wanted over $30 million. The Golden State wasn't willing to do it. This is all reports, but does that mean Golden State is willing to just let him walk? I don't think so, because he's a talented player, but hasn't found his way into this current rotation. But I guess without getting too long-winded, if we are at the point the Nets are like close to the play-in, so they won't have a high draft pick, and you're kind of just getting, non-lottery picks in, yeah, I'd see if you can get a Josh Giddey, see if you can get Jonathan Kuminga. If Markelle Fultz, who's somehow still a free agent, is still around, maybe see if you can bring him in. I mean, yeah, they'll definitely have to then use that cap space to bring in players with some semblance of upside.
Where does this Nets team go by the All-Star break, trade deadline? What are we looking at? If you could draw me a picture of the team, what would I see?
So my thoughts are, by the time you get to the All-Star break, I don't think you'll see Dennis, Dorian, or CJ on the team. I just think they're playing way too well right now. Obviously, Dennis and Cam more than Dorian in terms of like what other teams are going to be expecting from them. But I think by the time we get to the trade deadline, I don't think any of those guys will be on the team, just because I just think if other teams are looking for other pieces, I mean, we've heard there's been maybe 10 teams interested in Cam before the season started, and then we see the way he's playing now, and he's showing more of the dribble drive game and the passing game, so it kind of lets him be more flexible in various lineups. Yeah, I think by the time we get to the trade deadline, I don't think you'll see any of those three guys there. As far as Ben, because I've seen a lot of people theorize, I think Ben's going to finish this season with the team. I just think especially if he's going to be on this plan where he's not playing back-to-backs for an indefinite amount of time, whether that means he's really 100% or not, I don't know. But that is at least what the Nets are planning to do right now. And I mean, as long as he's on this roster, $40 million of salary cap space will clear up. And I think that might just be a lot to pass up. And I don't see anything of like a buyout happening. I don't see where that would benefit the Nets or Ben. I think Dennis.
Wait. Why wouldn't it benefit Ben?
So, well, one, I mean, players have spoke about, and this is in various sports, like obviously the buyout, he'd have to take less money. Now, I don't know. That would depend on the two parties, how much he takes out of whatever he's owed this season. But if I'm Ben, I would want.
Let me cut you for 1 second.
Yeah.
In the NBA, the players actually have a lot of leverage in that. It's usually, I think, around 5% of the contract. Very, very, very low number that the team actually saves money-wise. I think that it would benefit Ben for this reason, that he'd become a free agent, and he'd be able to sign with the team that's probably going to promise him the most minutes, so he can, attempt to build some value, so he's not playing either, outside of the United States or staying home and calling it a career.
Right. I understand that. I guess what I mean is, obviously for the Nets, it doesn't. I mean, I should take it back. It would benefit them because it would mean he isn't on the roster. So obviously you would still get the benefit of his cap slot opening up in the offseason. As far as Ben, especially because his future seems pretty uncertain right now because it all depends on what this season brings for him. Like, let's say, even if he doesn't play in back-to-backs, I think the Nets have, like 13 instances of that happening over the course of the season. So, I mean, he's missing, and he's already missed the 2 back-to-backs they've already had. So let's say he misses 11 more games, and let's say, and I know it's doing a lot of projecting, but let's say he's relatively healthy, like he can play like 40 to 50 games. I think it would help him in both ways if he can show what he can do for the Nets, get his money, and then go into the offseason without having to rush a decision. That's why I said it wouldn't benefit him, in my opinion, because the buyout, if there was such a scenario, then he would have to pick a team that he would hope, like you said, would give him the minutes to allow him to, boost his free agency, where I think the Nets probably give him the best chance of doing that, and he still gets his money. That's, I guess, what I mean by I don't think it would benefit him as much as some people think.
That's fair. I think Bernie Lee, who is Ben's agent, I don't think they do a buyout without knowing beforehand that he's going to be going somewhere, right? When Blake got bought out a couple years ago, he already knew he was coming to Brooklyn before the buyout was done. You don't take the buyout unless someone's going to be offering you, at least some minutes. But anyway, I digress. Enough with Ben. I got to ask this. What is your favorite NBA jersey of all time? Could be any team, any era.
Top of my head, it's got to be I don't know if it's their classic edition, but the Nuggets jerseys with the skyline on the jersey. I guess it was the jersey they wore in like the 80s.
The rainbow
By
one?
far, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are probably one of my favorite like jerseys of all time. They just look so clean.
I know what you're talking about, but your answer is absolutely incorrect. The best NBA, don't laugh. The best NBA jersey of all time is the Dr. J Nets jersey with the stars and stripes. That's the only acceptable answer. You did very good the whole podcast, and you just ruined it. Ruined it, Sharif. Come on, bro. What's going on? You got any plugs, bro, before we get going?
Only plugs I got for those who are interested. Obviously, all of my writing appears on NetsWire, and if you want to, follow me on Twitter, it's at Sharif Keaton. Obviously, Keaton is, and yes, and the K are capital. Those are the only plugs I had. I look forward to anybody who's following me already, and anyone else who wants to, see my content. Those are where you can find my work.
You'll find his stuff in the description box below, so you don't got to even Google it or anything. It'll be right there. You can follow me at NetFans, on Twitter. You're watching this on YouTube right now. If you enjoyed the episode, if you're not subscribed, press that button, and have a good day, have a good night, and let's go Nets.